the brink of oblivion. The planet Zithra was dying. Once, it had been a world of towering forests, cascading rivers, and skies painted in shades of violet and gold. But those days were long gone. Now, Zithra was a graveyard of ash and decay. Its jungles had crumbled into skeletal forests, rivers had boiled into sulphurous pools, and the air itself seemed alive with poison. Storms raged endlessly across the plains, lightning tearing through the gray skies like the anger of some ancient god. Amid this devastation, a small group of humans found themselves stranded, cut off from their supply lines and abandoned by those who were supposed to protect them. Among them were Kalen Varick, a stoic leader hardened by years of survival on hostile worlds, Mira Solon, a sharp-witted engineer with a knack for making life out of scrap, and Torsin Kal, a survival specialist whose instincts had saved him in the deadliest corners of the galaxy. They were Deathworlders, humans bred for extremes, trained to survive where others would perish. Yet even for them, Zithra was a test unlike any other. The first warning came in the form of the storms. They weren't ordinary weather phenomena, they were violent, unpredictable, and toxic. Lightning struck in wild arcs, igniting the dry underbrush and releasing clouds of poisonous gas. Kalen scanned the horizon through his visor, noting the faint shimmer of a storm approaching. "It's coming faster than the last one," he muttered, his voice steady but tense. Mira, crouched over a cracked power generator, looked up with narrowed eyes. "We don't have the supplies to ride this out. If we don't move, we'll be buried in ash or worse." Torsin, ever the pragmatist, examined the terrain. "There's a ridge ahead. It's higher ground. Could give us a small advantage at least." He paused, then added with a grim smile, "Not that anyone else cared to find us. Everyone else abandoned us weeks ago." The word stung. The colony they had been sent to assist had turned their backs, leaving them to die. Supplies meant for survival were rationed for those who mattered to the colony, leaving Kalen and his team to scavenge. Every day was a negotiation with death, predatory creatures prowling the barren plains, venomous plants, and the toxic storms that could strip flesh from bone if they miscalculated. Yet even in the face of utter abandonment, the Deathworlders pressed on. Kalen tightened his grip on his plasma rifle, scanning for movement. "Remember," he said quietly, "they think we're finished. They think we'll just collapse. But they've never met people like us." Mira snorted. "People like us, huh? People like us don't get abandoned to die on a planet that wants to kill us in every possible way." "Exactly," Kalen said, his eyes hard. "And that's why we'll survive." As they moved toward the ridge, the landscape around them shifted ominously. The ground cracked underfoot and sulphurous steam hissed from jagged fissures. Strange alien plants twisted in unnatural shapes, their leaves sharp as blades. The air was thick with toxins, forcing Mira to adjust her filtration mask constantly. The trio's footsteps were careful, calculated, each one a small triumph over the planet's hostility. Hours passed. The storm drew closer, and the sky darkened to a near-black violet. Lightning illuminated the ruins of the alien colony scattered across the plains. Crumbling buildings stood as a testament to those who had surrendered long before. Kalen's gaze lingered on the remains of a research station, its walls scorched and broken. He could almost feel the ghosts of the colonists who had once worked there. They had left no message, no warning, only abandonment. Finally they reached the ridge. From this vantage point, the devastation of Zithra was breathtaking in its cruelty. Rivers of molten sulfur snaked through the valleys, and skeletal forests swayed under the force of the approaching storm. The wind carried the cries of unseen creatures, a chorus of menace that made even Torsin tense. Kalen crouched behind a jagged outcrop, scanning the horizon. "We can't stay here long," he said. "The storm will hit in less than an hour. We need shelter and we need it fast." Mira examined the ridge. "There's a cave over there," she said, pointing to a dark opening partially hidden by jagged rock formations. "Could be deep enough to shield us from the worst of it." Torsin nodded. "Let's move." Quietly. No sudden movements. As they approached the cave, a shadow shifted near the entrance. Torsin signaled for caution and Kalen raised his rifle. The shadow materialized into a creature the likes of which they had never seen, an apex predator of Zithra, its limbs long and spindly, its eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. It crouched low, observing them with intelligent curiosity, its mandibles clicking. Kalen held his breath. This was not just survival, they were being tested. The Deathworlders had trained for predators, toxins, and storms, but Zithra seemed to be alive with a malevolent intent. Yet even as the creature circled, Torsin's eyes never left it. "We move together. No hesitation," he whispered. In a coordinated surge they dashed toward the cave. The predator lunged, claws scraping stone, but they made it inside. Mira slammed a boulder in front of the entrance, cutting off pursuit. The storm hit moments later, shaking the cave with deafening roars and gusts that threatened to rip the rocks apart. Inside, the trio caught their breath. Their bodies ached, their lungs burned from the toxins outside, but their spirits remained unbroken. Kalen removed his helmet, revealing a face streaked with grime but set with determination. "They thought we'd die out there," he said, voice echoing in the cavern. "They thought we'd give up. But they underestimated us. They always do." Mira sank to the ground, exhausted, but a spark of pride glimmered in her eyes. "We're alive," she said simply. "And we'll stay alive, no matter what this planet throws at us." Torsin grinned, bloodied but unbowed. "Exactly. Let them write us off. Let them abandon us. Out here it's only us, the storm, and Zithra. And guess what? We don't quit." For the first time since they had landed, the cave offered not just shelter, but a moment of clarity. They were alone, yes, abandoned, yes, but not powerless. In the heart of a planet designed to kill, humans had the edge. Where others saw despair, they saw opportunity. Where others saw doom, they saw a challenge. Kalen gazed out at the storm, the jagged horizon illuminated by lightning. "Tomorrow we move further inland. We find resources. We survive. And someday we'll show them that Deathworlders aren't meant to be abandoned. We'll show them that humans can thrive where nothing else can." The storm raged outside, a reminder that Zithra would not relent. But inside the cave, 3 humans made a silent vow. A vow to survive, to endure, and to thrive against the impossible. The brink of oblivion had claimed many, but it would not claim them. Not yet. And so, as lightning split the sky and ash fell like snow outside, Kalen, Mira, and Torsin prepared for the long night ahead. For the humans, every heartbeat, every breath, every cautious step was a triumph against a world that had written them off. They were abandoned, yes. But death had never truly met a Deathworlder before. Survival against the odds. The night in the cave was long, filled with the relentless thunder of the storm outside and the hiss of poisonous winds racing across the barren plains. Inside, Kalen, Mira, and Torsin worked in tense silence, repairing equipment salvaged from their landing pod and fortifying the cave as best they could. Every sound, the drip of water, a shifting rock, even the faint scuttling of creatures in the shadows, reminded them that Zithra did not forgive weakness. Mira crouched over a broken filtration system, her hands deftly weaving wires and adjusting valves. "If we don't purify the air soon, we'll be breathing poison all night," she muttered, her brow furrowed in concentration. Sparks flickered as she coaxed life from dead machinery, the cave illuminated by the pale glow of repaired circuits. Torsin, meanwhile, patrolled the cave's perimeter, his senses alert to the subtle tremors in the rock and the faint sound of movement outside. Even in the shelter of the cave, predators were never far. Zithra's life was a predator, or a poison, waiting for a lapse in attention. Kalen sat back against the wall, studying a holographic map projected from a salvaged terminal. The display flickered, showing the topography of the surrounding region. Toxic plains, jagged rock formations, and pockets of alien vegetation. He traced a route with his finger, calculating the distance to the nearest known supply depot. The colony had written it off as unreachable, but Kalen knew differently. "We'll need to move before dawn," he said quietly. "The storms are cyclical. If we time it right, we can cross the plains while the winds are calm enough." Mira shook her head. "You're insane. Even the colonists refuse to go near that depot. It's crawling with predators and radiation pockets. One misstep and it's over." Torsin grinned, a glint of excitement in his eyes. "Sounds like a Tuesday morning on Zithra. I like those odds." The 3 shared a brief, knowing smile. Deathworlders thrived on impossible odds. Where others saw doom, they saw opportunity. And where others saw death, they saw a challenge to be overcome. As the first gray light of dawn seeped into the cave, Kalen led the way, moving with cautious precision. Mira carried a compact toolkit, Torsin held a makeshift spear-like weapon, and Kalen carried his rifle. Every step across the toxic plains was a test. Cracks in the ground hissed with heat, releasing clouds of corrosive gas, while alien predators slithered just out of sight, their eyes glowing faintly in the low light. Hours passed in tense silence, punctuated by sudden bursts of danger. A swarm of flying creatures, winged like metallic wasps, attacked without warning, forcing the trio to dive behind rock formations and return fire with precision shots. Myra's ingenuity kept them alive, She rigged a set of automated traps from scavenged parts, zapping the swarm with electrical arcs. Torsin, ever the tactician, scouted ahead, signaling Kalen when paths were clear. "This route isn't the easiest, but it's survivable," he said through hand signals. "We avoid the radiation pockets here, predators there, and the fissures beyond." Even amidst the chaos, the humans adapted quickly. Myra's engineering skills turned scraps into weapons and protective gear. Torsin's instincts guided them through every hidden danger. Kalen's leadership ensured that fear never overcame strategy. Zithra was punishing, but the Deathworlders were relentless. By mid-afternoon, they reached the ruins of another abandoned outpost, half buried in ash and rock. Broken terminals and shattered glass littered the area. Kalen scanned the remnants, noting that no rescue teams had come. They had truly been abandoned. Mira knelt beside a shattered terminal, attempting to access the last remaining data. "It's incomplete," she said. "Most of the colony didn't even bother documenting what happened here. They gave up. Left everything behind." Kalen's jaw tightened. "Then we document it. We survive. And we prove that giving up isn't human nature, it's choice. And we choose not to quit." Their progress was slow but steady. They scavenged water from hidden reservoirs, hunted small alien fauna for protein, and crafted rudimentary shelters from the ruins. Every step required ingenuity and risk management. One miscalculation could spell death. Yet day by day they grew stronger, more resilient. Night fell again and the predators came out. A massive creature, its form a blur of shadow and spikes, stalked the humans. Torsin signaled for silence, and the trio huddled behind a crumbling wall. The creature sniffed the air, its claws scraping the ground inches away. Kalen's rifle was ready, but he waited for the perfect moment. When it lunged, they struck in unison, exploiting the creature's blind spots and setting traps that Mira had devised. Within minutes, the predator was incapacitated, leaving them alive, but exhausted. Mira exhaled sharply. "We can't keep this pace forever." Kalen shook his head. "We don't need forever. We just need until we reach the depot. Supplies there, shelter there. That's the difference between life and death." Torsin looked out at the horizon, dark clouds rolling in. "Zithra doesn't negotiate. It punishes. But it hasn't killed us yet. And that's proof we belong here. They left us for dead, but we're still standing. We've got the edge they never had, adaptability, courage, and the refusal to quit." The night was long as it always was on Zithra, but the humans endured. They slept in shifts, always alert, always prepared. Mira monitored the filtration systems, ensuring the toxic air did not seep in. Torsin sharpened weapons, checked traps, and reinforced barricades. Kalen reviewed the map repeatedly, planning the most efficient path to the depot. In the quiet moments between storms, the three shared stories of Earth, of worlds they had survived before, and of times when human ingenuity had defied odds so extreme that others had called it impossible. These stories were more than nostalgia, they were reminders that they were not ordinary. They were Deathworlders, forged in environments harsher than Zithra, and trained to turn despair into opportunity. By the time the second dawn arrived, Kalen surveyed their surroundings. The path to the depot was visible now, a treacherous stretch of ash plains dotted with fissures and jagged rocks. Radiation readings flickered on Myra's portable scanner. Predators had been spotted in clusters ahead. Yet none of this deterred them. Kalen's voice was firm, almost serene. "This is it. The hardest part is ahead, but it's just another obstacle. We've survived storms, predators, and abandonment. We'll survive this too. Stay sharp. Trust each other. And don't quit. Not now. Not ever." Mira and Torsin nodded. In that moment there was no fear, only resolve. Zithra could throw everything it had at them and it would still not break them. Humans had a way of adapting, overcoming, and enduring that no storm, predator, or toxic wasteland could destroy. And as they stepped onto the ash plains, moving toward the depot that others had deemed unreachable, the Deathworlders embraced a truth that would carry them through the worst of Zithra. Survival was not a matter of chance, it was a matter of choice. And they had chosen to survive no matter the cost. The abandoned colony. The plains stretched endlessly before Kalen, Mira, and Torsin, a wasteland of ash and jagged rocks. The morning sun barely pierced the thick, toxic haze, casting everything in a muted gray light. The air was sharp and acrid, forcing Mira to constantly adjust her filtration mask. Even the ground beneath their feet seemed treacherous, cracking with hidden fissures and letting out faint hisses of heat. Zithra had become an arena of death, but the Deathworlders pressed on, driven by a single goal: reach the supply depot, secure their survival, and prove that humans refuse to be written off. Hours of careful navigation brought them to the outskirts of what appeared to be an abandoned colony. The buildings were skeletal, blackened with fire and pockmarked from some ancient bombardment. Doors hung crooked on rusted hinges, and broken vehicles littered the ash-laden streets. It was a place frozen in despair, a tomb for those who had given up. Kalen's jaw tightened. They didn't just leave the depot, he said quietly, voice low enough that only Mira and Torsen could hear. They abandoned this entire colony. Left everything behind, like it didn't matter. Mira crouched beside a collapsed wall, brushing ash off a cracked data slate. No warnings. No evacuation orders. They didn't even take the time to try. Just gone. Torsen's eyes scanned the horizon. And yet we're here. We survive where everyone else failed. Typical humans. His tone carried pride, tinged with bitterness. We weren't supposed to make it this far. They expected us to die. Kalen nodded. And yet here we are. That's what they didn't count on. The three advanced cautiously through the ruins, each step a delicate negotiation with danger. The colony was not completely dead. Strange noises echoed from collapsed buildings, the faint scuttling of alien creatures who had made the ruins their home. Shadows moved with unsettling intelligence, and every corner held the potential for a lethal encounter. Mira found a partially intact terminal and tried to power it on. The screen flickered weakly, then stabilized, revealing fragments of the colony's final hours. They didn't just leave us for dead, she said slowly, reading the logs. They left records of failed missions, aborted research, warnings of dangerous energy fields and mutated fauna. But nothing to help anyone survive. It's like they wanted the planet to consume them. Kalen exhaled slowly. Cowards. They ran when they could have fought. When they could have survived. We won't make that mistake. As they explored, a low growl reverberated through the ruins. Torsen froze, signaling for silence. Kalen followed his gaze, spotting a massive creature stalking them from the shadows. It was unlike any predator they had seen before, a hulking quadruped with armored plates, claws that could tear through steel, and eyes that glowed a dull crimson. Torsen whispered, "That thing hunts everything in these ruins. We can't fight it head-on." Mira scanned the area, her mind racing. "We can use the terrain to our advantage. Collapse a wall, create a trap. It won't see it coming." The trio moved in careful coordination. Kalen drew the predator's attention, firing a series of controlled blasts to guide it toward a weakened building wall. Mira and Torsen readied their improvised trap. When the predator lunged, the wall gave way, pinning it long enough for them to escape. Dust choked the air and their hearts raced, but they had survived yet again. Hours turned into the sweltering afternoon. Their progress was slow. Every building had to be checked for hidden dangers, every street for hidden traps or radiation pockets. Yet, in the midst of devastation, the humans found glimpses of hope. Hidden water filtration units still ran, partially functional solar panels offered minimal power, and emergency rations, though expired, could be made edible with Myra's engineering expertise. Kalen surveyed a crumbling plaza from a high vantage point. "The depot is not far," he said. "But the closer we get, the more dangerous it will become." The colony wasn't abandoned by chance. It was abandoned because Zithra doesn't forgive weakness. Mira tightened the straps on her pack. "Good thing we're not weak." Torsen's lips curled in a grim smile. "We thrive where others perish. That's the Deathworlder way." As they prepared to move deeper into the colony toward the depot, the ground shook beneath them. A low, resonant hum filled the air, growing louder by the second. Myra's scanner beeped frantically, indicating unusual energy fluctuations nearby. "What now?" Kalen muttered, scanning the streets. A massive structure at the colony's center began to crack and shift. The hum intensified, revealing that the building itself was unstable, likely a containment unit for some dangerous experiment or energy core. Torsen grabbed Kalen and Mira, dragging them back just as the structure collapsed in a shower of fire and debris. Dust settled. Silence followed, broken only by the distant rumble of storms outside. The trio emerged unscathed but shaken. Kalen's face was set in grim determination. "This place is dangerous. More dangerous than the plains. But the depot is here for a reason. It's survivable if we use our heads." Mira glanced around at the ruined colony, her eyes sharp. "They left us for dead. Every corner of this place screams abandonment. And yet, we're still standing. We've learned the planet. We've learned its patterns. That gives us an advantage." Torsen nodded. "Exactly. They counted on us failing. They counted on despair. But despair doesn't survive here. Only determination does. And we've got that in spades. By evening, the trio set up a temporary camp in a partially intact building near the colony's edge. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in bruised shades of purple and orange. Outside, predators prowled and the wind carried the sharp tang of poison. Inside, Kaelin, Mira, and Torsin shared a quiet moment of reflection. "We've survived the storms, the predators, and now the ruins," Kaelin said softly. "The colony's dead, but we live. That's all that matters. Everything else, we can handle." Mira managed a tired smile. "They left us for dead, but we're still here. We'll reach the depot. We'll survive. And maybe, someday they'll realize that humans aren't just survivors. We're Deathworlders. And Deathworlders don't quit." Torsin raised his head, listening to the distant echoes of Zithra's dangers. "We move at dawn. The depot is just beyond the northern plains. Dangerous, yes, but nothing we haven't faced before. Nothing we can't survive." Kaelin looked out over the colony, the ruins stretching endlessly into the toxic haze. They abandoned everything, buildings, research, lives. They left a planet to claim them. But we're different. We adapt. We endure. We survive. And that's what makes us human. That's what makes us unstoppable. Night fell, and the winds carried the cries of unseen creatures. Inside their temporary shelter, the Deathworlders rested, but their minds never slept. Zithra was relentless, unforgiving, and alive with danger, but Kaelin, Mira, and Torsin were alive too, sharper and more determined than ever. Tomorrow they would push deeper into the colony and toward the depot. The challenges would be immense, but their resolve was stronger. They had been abandoned to die, left behind in a world designed for extinction. But Zithra had never met Deathworlders before. And that would make all the difference. Humanity's edge. The morning sun barely penetrated the thick ash clouds that hung over Zithra's northern plains. The toxic haze shimmered with heat and dust, making the horizon look like a mirage. Kaelin, Mira, and Torsin emerged from the remnants of the abandoned colony, their movements calculated and silent. Every step across the jagged terrain was a negotiation with death. "The depot is within reach," Kaelin said, his voice steady despite the tension. "But the closer we get, the worse it becomes. We've seen predators, fissures, and storms, but beyond this point, Zithra throws its worst at us." Mira adjusted her filtration mask, scanning the landscape with her portable analyzer. "Radiation hotspots are higher here. The terrain is unstable. And judging by the predator tracks, something large is hunting this area. But it's passable. Carefully." Torsin's eyes gleamed with anticipation. "Passable? Perfect. Dangerous? Even better. Exactly the kind of place humans thrive." He hefted his spear-like weapon, every muscle taut. "Let's go show this planet what Deathworlders can do." Zithra was relentless. The trio navigated fissures that belched clouds of toxic gas, leapt across crumbling ridges, and dodged lightning strikes that scorched the barren earth. Every step required ingenuity and focus. Mira rigged makeshift bridges from debris to cross unstable ground. Torsin scouted ahead, signaling potential threats with precise hand gestures. Kaelin coordinated their path, reading the terrain like a chessboard and anticipating dangers before they appeared. Hours into their journey, the planet tested them further. A massive predator emerged from the ash, a hulking creature with armored skin, multiple limbs, and eyes that glowed faintly red. Its movements were deliberate, intelligent, and deadly. "Steady," Kaelin whispered. "We've handled worse. Just stick to the plan." Myra's hands flew over her toolkit. She set up an energy trap using scavenged components, creating a shimmering field designed to stun the creature without harming it permanently. Torsin lured the predator toward it with precise movements, every step a baited risk. When it stepped into the trap, sparks danced across its armored hide, and it roared in frustration, retreating into the shadows. Kaelin exhaled. "Good work. One down, many more to go, I'm sure." The depot was visible now, a fortress-like structure half buried in ash and debris. It had been abandoned for years, yet its purpose was clear: a repository of supplies, technology, and resources critical for survival. However, the final stretch to reach it was treacherous, a flat plain exposed to the full fury of Zithra's storms. "This is it," Mira said, scanning the open ground. "No cover. No way to hide. Just us, the terrain, and whatever this planet decides to throw at us." Torsin grinned despite the tension. "Nothing like a good open battlefield to test our limits. Let's do this." Kaelin studied the plain. We can't run straight across. The winds will shred us and the predators will see us as easy prey. We need a path, a strategy and speed. Follow me closely. Using the landscape to their advantage, they zigzagged through small depressions and rocky outcroppings, using the sparse cover available. Mira carried a small EMP device, ready to disable electronic hazards. Torsin kept a keen eye on the sky, predicting the storm's bursts of lightning and wind. Kalen led the formation, moving with precision, timing every step with the rhythmic pulses of the storm. Halfway across, a sudden gust struck, forcing them to the ground. Lightning split the sky above, striking dangerously close. The ground shook, throwing debris in all directions. Mira shouted, "We have to move now." In a coordinated surge they ran, their bodies nearly flattened by the wind. Debris struck them, dust filled their masks, and yet they pressed on. Every heartbeat, every breath was a battle, but their resolve did not waver. They reached the far edge of the plain just as the storm began to abate. The depot loomed ahead, massive and imposing but seemingly intact. Kalen motioned for a brief pause, scanning the structure for threats. "We've made it this far. But the depot isn't empty. It's not meant to be easy. Be ready for anything." Inside, the depot was a treasure trove of human ingenuity. Automated storage units, still partially functional, contained supplies, energy packs, medical kits, and weapons. Myra's eyes lit up as she examined the equipment. This is more than enough to survive. We can rebuild, fortify, and even expand from here. Torsen's expression was grim. Survival is one thing. But Zithra won't stop testing us. The planet doesn't forgive complacency. Kalen nodded, surveying the depot. Then we don't forgive it. We adapt, we fortify, we survive. And we do it on our terms. As they secured the perimeter, Kalen activated the terminal at the depot's center. Holographic maps revealed more than just supplies. They showed energy fields, predator zones, and structural weaknesses in the surrounding plains. Myra's fingers flew over the interface, integrating the data with their navigation systems. "This is a game changer," she said, eyes wide. "With this, we can predict the storms, avoid predators, and find safe zones across the plains. We're not just surviving anymore, we can thrive." Torsen smiled. "Thriving. I like the sound of that. Especially when everyone else counted us dead weeks ago." Kalen stood at the depot's entrance, looking back at the path they had crossed. The abandoned colony, the toxic plains, the predators, they had faced it all. And yet here they were. Alive, unbroken, and stronger than before. "Everyone else abandoned us," Kalen said quietly. "They counted on despair. They counted on failure. But we're humans. Deathworlders. And we don't quit. That's the edge they never understood. That's the advantage no storm, no predator, and no planet can take from us." Mira and Torsen nodded, sharing a quiet understanding. Zithra had tested them in every conceivable way: storms, predators, toxic gases, and isolation. But human ingenuity, courage, and adaptability had carried them through. The depot was more than just a lifeline. It was proof that determination could overcome even the harshest conditions. The trio spent the night fortifying the depot. Barricades were reinforced, traps were set, and sensors were calibrated to detect approaching predators. Mira rigged the filtration system to handle even the most toxic air. Torsen patrolled the perimeter, anticipating threats from every angle. Kalen reviewed their strategy, mapping the surrounding area and planning their next moves. For the first time since landing on Zithra, the Deathworlders felt a measure of control. They had turned a hopeless situation into a strategic advantage. And yet, Kalen knew that survival was a continuous challenge. Zithra was relentless, and the planet would continue to test their limits. But for now they had the upper hand. Kalen glanced at his companions. "Tomorrow we push further. We explore the depot, secure more resources, and prepare for what comes next. Zithra may be lethal, but it's predictable. And humans are unstoppable." Mira smiled faintly. "We've survived storms, predators, and abandonment. The depot is just the next obstacle. And obstacles are what we were built for." Torsen's grin was wide and fierce. "Then let's see what this planet thinks it can throw at us next. Because we've got the edge and we're not giving it up." And so, as the ash-laden winds howled outside and predators circled in the distance, Kalen, Mira, and Torsen prepared for the next stage of their journey. They had crossed the plains, conquered the colony, and claimed the depot. They were alive, stronger than ever, and ready to face whatever Zithra had left. Because humans, especially Deathworlders, were not meant to surrender. They were meant to endure, to adapt, to conquer. And that edge, humanity's edge, was unstoppable, the deadly trial. The depot offered a momentary reprieve from Zithra's relentless hostility, but Kalen, Mira, and Torsin knew it was temporary. The planet had a way of testing anyone who dared to survive. And it had a final, most formidable trial waiting for them. As the trio prepared to explore the depot further, the ground beneath them trembled. A low, resonant hum filled the air, vibrating through the floor and rattling the walls. Myra's scanner beeped frantically, displaying fluctuating energy readings. "What now?" she muttered, eyes wide as the hum grew louder, more intense. Torsin's jaw tightened. "The planet doesn't just give challenges. It punishes mistakes. And I think it's ready to test us, hard." Kalen studied the horizon through a reinforced viewport. The sky, previously a muted gray, had turned an ominous violet, streaked with violent lightning. Winds whipped ash and debris into their faces. The depot's sensors indicated a massive storm forming, one that dwarfed anything they had encountered before. "This isn't just a storm," Kalen said, voice low. "It's a planetary-scale tempest, the likes of which no human has survived. And Zithra has decided we're its prey." Myra's fingers flew across the terminal, trying to extract any data on storm patterns. "The winds, temperatures, radiation spikes, it's unlike anything in the archives. If we try to move during this, we'll be ripped apart." Torsin leaned against the wall, eyes scanning the approaching tempest. "Then we adapt. That's all we've ever done. This storm isn't going to write our obituary. Not if we don't let it." The trio gathered supplies and prepared for what Kalen called the deadly trial. Every tool, every weapon, every ounce of human ingenuity mattered. They reinforced the depot's structure with scavenged beams, patched ventilation systems, and laid improvised grounding cables to protect against lightning strikes. Mira configured an energy shield to redirect radiation bursts, while Torsin strengthened barricades and prepared emergency escape routes. When the storm hit, it hit with unparalleled fury. Winds exceeding 200 kilometers per hour ripped across the plains, hurling jagged rocks and molten debris toward the depot. Lightning struck with blinding intensity, arcing between fissures and buildings, sending showers of fire across the terrain. Toxic gases filled the air and radiation readings spiked dangerously. The building groaned under the assault. Kalen held a support beam, sweat streaming down his face, as Mira recalibrated the filtration system to handle the intense toxins. Torsin patrolled the perimeter, bracing against the gale to ensure no breaches in their defenses. Hours passed like days. Every second was a battle. The storm tore at the depot's walls and predators, emboldened by the chaos, prowled closer, drawn by the scent of life. The Deathworlders were forced to fight on multiple fronts: the environment, the storm, and the relentless creatures of Zithra. During a brief lull, Kalen surveyed the devastation outside. Fissures had widened, rivers of molten sulfur raged, and the landscape seemed almost unrecognizable. Yet inside the depot the humans remained unbroken. Myra's voice broke the tense silence. "If we survive this, if we get through it, nothing will ever feel impossible again." Kalen nodded. "Survival isn't about feeling safe. It's about enduring, adapting, and refusing to give up. Zithra wants to see if we'll quit. We won't. Not now, not ever." Suddenly the depot shook violently. A fissure opened near the storage area, sending debris tumbling. Torsin shouted, "We need to secure the supplies. If they're destroyed, we're done." Kalen and Mira moved quickly, salvaging equipment and securing essential items. Sparks flew, dust choked their lungs, but every motion was deliberate, every choice critical. The storm outside was unrelenting, yet inside the Deathworlders' focus was absolute. Hours of relentless struggle passed. Mira rigged a system of automated shields to protect the depot's most vulnerable sections, while Torsin's traps kept predators at bay. Kalen coordinated their movements, anticipating structural failures and redirecting resources where needed. By the storm's peak, it became clear: survival was possible, but only because of human ingenuity, determination, and teamwork. Where machines and structures failed, the humans adapted. Where instinct alone would not suffice, their minds crafted solutions. As night fell, the storm showed no sign of abating. But a glimmer of hope appeared on the horizon, a temporary lull in the wind, a brief clearing in the clouds. Kalen knew this was their chance to act. "We move," he commanded. "We push beyond the depot, secure additional supplies, and fortify further. The storm isn't over, but we can use its lull to gain an advantage." Mira and Torsin nodded, understanding the stakes. Together they moved across the depot's ash-laden courtyards, navigating hazards with precision and care. Lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the surrounding plains and revealing the predators lurking in the distance. Each step was a testament to human resilience. The planet was lethal, unpredictable, and merciless, but the humans adapted faster than Zithra could strike. Every obstacle became a challenge to overcome, every danger an opportunity to prove that Deathworlders were not ordinary. By the early hours of the following day, the storm had passed, leaving a devastated but intact depot in its wake. The plains outside were unrecognizable, scarred by wind, fire, and molten fissures. Predators had been forced into hiding, and the toxic gases had dissipated somewhat. Kalen, Mira, and Torsin stood at the depot's edge, surveying the aftermath. Their bodies were battered, their clothing scorched, and their lungs strained from hours of filtered air. Yet, despite the exhaustion, their eyes held a fierce light, a testament to survival against impossible odds. Torsin broke the silence with a grin. That was insane. But we did it. Mira wiped sweat and ash from her face. We survived the deadly trial. And the depot, it's ours. Zithra tested us and failed. Humans adapted, survived, and thrived. Kalen's expression was solemn but resolute. This planet isn't finished with us. But we've proven something important. Survival isn't about luck. It's about determination, ingenuity, and refusing to quit. Zithra doesn't forgive weakness. And neither do we. For the first time since their arrival, the Deathworlders felt a measure of control. They had faced the ultimate test, endured the planet's wrath, and emerged alive. The depot was no longer just a lifeline, it was a symbol of human resilience, ingenuity, and the unyielding spirit of those who refused to surrender. As dawn broke over the scarred plains, Kalen looked at his companions. We've crossed the storm, outsmarted predators, and survived what no one else could. The depot is just the beginning. Tomorrow we explore further, secure more resources, and continue our journey. Zithra will keep testing us, but we've proven that humans can adapt, endure, and overcome. That's our edge. Mira smiled faintly, exhaustion in her eyes but pride in her heart. We've survived every challenge so far. Nothing will stop us, not storms, not predators, not abandonment. Torsin's grin was fierce, filled with defiance. Then let's see what this planet thinks it can throw at us next. Because we're still standing and we're not giving up. And so, as the sun rose over a battered but still standing depot, the Deathworlders prepared for the next phase of their survival. Zithra had thrown its deadly trial at them, and humans had endured. Because humans, especially Deathworlders, were not just survivors. They were masters of adaptation, ingenuity, and courage. They were unstoppable, the reckoning. The storm had passed, leaving Zithra's plains scarred and silent. Smoke curled from fissures, ash drifted across jagged rocks, and the faint cries of distant predators echoed in the empty air. For Kalen, Mira, and Torsin, the aftermath of the deadly trial was not just survival, it was a statement. They had endured the planet's wrath, outsmarted predators, and conquered impossible odds. But survival was not enough. The abandoned colony, the forsaken depots, and the desolate plains were reminders that humans had been written off, deemed expendable. Those who had abandoned them, who had counted on their death, would soon learn that underestimating humans was a grave mistake. Kalen stood atop a ridge overlooking the plains. His eyes, sharp and calculating, swept across the horizon. They left us for dead, he muttered. They assumed despair would claim us. They assumed the planet would finish the job. But despair isn't human. Despair doesn't survive here. Humans survive because we refuse to quit. Mira adjusted her filtration mask and checked the supplies. The depot is secure for now, she said, but the rest of the colony, the ones who abandoned us, they'll realize we're alive soon. And when they do, it'll change everything. Torsin's grin was fierce, almost feral. Change everything? More like prove a point. They think humans are weak. They think abandonment equals victory. They're about to see the truth. That truth was simple. Humans, especially Deathworlders, adapted where others perished. They thrived in environments designed to kill. Every challenge faced, every predator outsmarted, every storm survived had sharpened their minds and bodies to a lethal edge. The abandoned colonists, scattered across Zithra, had only one message left for the trio. Survival was impossible. And yet, Kalen, Mira, and Torsin had rewritten the narrative. They moved through the colony like shadows, leaving evidence of their resourcefulness. Repaired communication arrays, secured energy reserves, and fortified positions. Each act was a statement. Humans were alive and alive on their own terms. As night fell, faint signals began to flicker across the colony's old network. The colonists, who had long assumed death had claimed the humans, picked up the transmissions. Panic rippled through their ranks. What is happening? One voice whispered over a grainy comlink. They were gone. Dead. They were abandoned. Another voice, trembling, muttered, "No, it can't be. How did they survive?" Kalen, monitoring the transmissions from the depot, allowed himself a faint smile. "It's simple," he said. "They didn't survive. They adapted. They endured. They refused to quit. That's what humans do." Mira tapped into one of the colony's partially functional surveillance drones. The feed revealed the abandoned settlement, still struggling under the planet's harsh conditions. The colonists were scrambling, attempting to regain control, but their fear was palpable. Every ruined building, every scavenged supply, every defensive barricade now bore the mark of the Deathworlders' ingenuity. "They're seeing proof," Mira said quietly. "Proof that abandonment doesn't equate to failure. That humans can thrive where others perish." Torsen's eyes gleamed in the dim glow of the depot's lights. "And that proof will change how they see us forever." Kalen activated a comlink, sending a brief, encrypted message to the nearest surviving colony leaders. It was not a plea. It was not a warning. It was a declaration. "We are alive. We survived Zithra. We endure. Adapt. Thrive. Humanity will not be abandoned again." The message spread like wildfire. Across the colony, shock, disbelief, and awe rippled through the remaining humans. Those who had once turned their backs, who had counted the trio dead, now faced an undeniable truth. Humans were exceptional. They were resilient, ingenious, and unstoppable. In the following days, Kalen, Mira, and Torsen moved through the colony, sharing their knowledge and fortifying positions. Mira repaired energy grids and filtration systems, turning decayed buildings into functional shelters. Torsen organized patrols and survival protocols, training the hesitant colonists to anticipate predators and environmental hazards. Kalen coordinated strategy, mapping safe routes, and preparing the settlement for further expansion. The abandoned colony slowly transformed. Where despair had reigned, determination now flourished. Humans who had once been ready to give up began to see possibilities where only death had been expected. The Deathworlders' survival had become a beacon, a living testament to the potential of human resilience. One evening, as the trio watched the twin suns set over the scarred plains, Kalen spoke quietly. "They thought they had won by abandoning us. They thought we'd fail. But survival isn't about what others expect. It's about what you're willing to endure. We've proven that humans do not quit. That's the real edge. That's what makes us unstoppable." Mira nodded, her eyes reflecting the fading light. "It's more than survival now. It's about legacy. About showing that humanity, no matter the odds, can adapt, endure, and overcome." Torsen smiled, his expression fierce and proud. "And the lesson has been delivered. They know it now. We've changed their perception. And Zithra, well, Zithra still has more challenges. But nothing will break us. Not anymore." The abandoned colonists began to approach the Deathworlders cautiously. Fear had been replaced with curiosity, and hesitation with respect. Kalen addressed them, his voice firm yet inspiring. "You left us for dead. You counted on this planet to finish the job. But we are alive. We endured. We adapted. We thrived. And you have a choice. You can continue to surrender to fear and despair, or you can survive as humans are meant to survive. Learn from us. Adapt. Endure. Thrive." For the first time, the colonists understood that survival wasn't about obedience or luck. It was about courage, ingenuity, and refusing to quit. Humans were not defined by abandonment or adversity. They were defined by the strength to endure. In the following weeks, the abandoned colony was transformed. Structures were repaired, resources were secured, and humans began to work together, guided by the principles demonstrated by Kalen, Mira, and Torsen. The Deathworlders had not only survived, they had inspired. They had rewritten the rules of survival on Zithra. Kalen looked over the revitalized colony, a sense of calm determination in his eyes. "Zithra may be harsh. It may be relentless. But humans are tougher. We adapt, we endure, and we thrive. And anyone who doubts that will learn it soon enough." Mira smiled faintly. "We've proven it once. We'll prove it again. No matter the planet, no matter the challenge." Torsen's grin was wide and unyielding. "Let them remember this, humanity is unstoppable. And Deathworlders, well, we're the sharpest edge of all." As the twin suns rose over the renewed colony, Kalen, Mira, and Torsin prepared for the next challenges. Zithra had tested them and they had prevailed. The abandoned colonists had witnessed their triumph, learning firsthand that humans could endure what others deemed impossible. And so, the legacy of the Deathworlders was cemented, a testament to the ingenuity, courage, and unbreakable spirit of humanity. Because humans, even when abandoned, never truly fail. They endure, they adapt, and they survive. And that truth would echo across Zithra forever. Legacy of the Deathworlders. The ash still lingered in the air, drifting across the plains of Zithra like a ghostly reminder of the planet's fury. But within the walls of the revitalized colony, life stirred. Fires burned in repaired hearths, machinery hummed with renewed purpose, and humans moved with a determination that had once seemed impossible. Kalen, Mira, and Torsin stood at the highest ridge overlooking their reclaimed settlement, the wind carrying the faint scent of sulfur and ash. "We've done more than survive," Kalen said quietly, his gaze sweeping the horizon. "We've rewritten what it means to endure on this planet. They left us for dead, and yet here we stand." Mira nodded, her eyes scanning the colony below. "Every barricade, every restored energy unit, every life we've saved, this is proof. Proof that humans can thrive where others would perish. That's the legacy we leave behind." Torsin grinned, adjusting his weapon as he scanned the plains. "The colonists have seen it with their own eyes. The planet may be deadly, but humans are unstoppable. And Deathworlders? We're the sharpest edge of that unstoppable force." Their journey had begun as a fight for mere survival, against toxic storms, predators, and the very planet itself. Zithra had thrown everything at them, testing their limits in ways that would have broken ordinary humans. Yet the Deathworlders had endured, adapted, and thrived. They had turned isolation into opportunity, danger into strategy, and despair into determination. The abandoned colonists had been witnesses to this transformation. Many had initially fled in fear, but as Kalen, Mira, and Torsin demonstrated the power of ingenuity and courage, hope had returned. People who had once counted themselves dead found strength in survival. Communities reorganized, resources were efficiently managed, and training programs were instituted to teach survival techniques. Kalen turned to Mira. "We've given them the tools, the knowledge, and the will to survive. But we can't just stop here. Zithra will keep testing them, and us. Adaptation is continuous. Survival doesn't pause." Mira adjusted the filtration mask on her face, her eyes sharp. "Then we lead by example. We continue pushing boundaries, exploring, securing new territory. Let them see that humanity doesn't just endure, it expands, innovates, and thrives." Torsin's grin widened. "Exactly. Every predator we face, every storm we survive, every challenge we overcome, that's proof. And proof is contagious. Humans learn by example. They see it, they feel it, and they follow." Across the colony, communication arrays crackled to life. Survivors who had once doubted the possibility of endurance now sent reports of successful adaptations, innovations, and defenses inspired by the Deathworlders' methods. The abandoned colony became a living classroom, a place where the principles of survival, ingenuity, and courage were taught in real time. Kalen activated the central terminal, projecting a holographic map of the colony and surrounding plains. Indicators highlighted resource-rich zones, predator habitats, and safe paths through the toxic terrain. "We've turned a planet that wanted to kill us into a controlled environment," he said. "Every calculation, every precaution, every innovation we implement reduces risk and increases survival. Zithra may still be lethal, but humans now hold the advantage." Myra's hands flew over her portable interface, integrating drone surveillance and environmental data into the colony's systems. "The more we understand the planet, the more we can manipulate its hazards. Predators, storms, radiation, all manageable with knowledge, strategy, and teamwork. That's the Deathworlder way." Torsin leaned on his spear, his expression thoughtful. "And that's what separates humans from anything else that's faced this planet. They adapt, they endure, they don't quit. Zithra has challenges we can't fully predict, but we can anticipate, innovate, and overcome. That's the edge we've always had." Even as night fell over the colony, the twin moons casting pale light across ash-strewn plains, Kalen, Mira, and Torsin remained vigilant. Patrols moved silently through the streets, drones hovered above, and the most vulnerable zones were monitored with precision. The Deathworlders knew that survival on Zithra was a continuous trial, but trials were nothing new. "This planet thinks it can break us," Kalen said, voice low and determined. "But it hasn't learned yet. Humans don't break. Humans endure. And Deathworlders, we define the limit of endurance. We create the standard. And anyone who follows learns to survive and thrive because of it. Myra's gaze followed a distant predator moving along the ridge. It's still dangerous. We're not invincible. But we're prepared. And that makes all the difference. Preparation, ingenuity, and courage, that's what survival demands. Torsen's grin turned fierce. And the planet? Well, it just found out who it's really dealing with. Over the following weeks, the colony transformed into a hub of human ingenuity. Resources were rationed intelligently, energy systems optimized, and defenses strengthened. Survivors were trained in survival tactics, environmental analysis, and predator management. The abandoned colonists who had once fled now stood tall, inspired by the example of the Deathworlders. Kalen watched them, pride in his eyes. They see it now. Survival isn't a chance occurrence. It's a choice. And when humans choose to endure, to adapt, to fight, nothing stops them. Not storms. Not predators. Not abandonment. Nothing. Mira nodded. And that's the legacy we leave. Not just surviving but proving that humanity is relentless. That being left for dead doesn't define us. It challenges us to rise higher. Torsen's voice was quiet but fierce. They'll tell stories about this place. About the humans who survived Zithra when no one thought it possible. About the Deathworlders who turned despair into triumph. And those stories, they'll inspire generations. As dawn broke over the scarred plains, light shimmered across the colony. For the first time since the humans had arrived, Zithra seemed almost serene, still harsh, still dangerous, but a stage for human ingenuity and courage. Kalen, Mira, and Torsen stood atop the ridge, looking out across the plains that had tested them, taught them, and ultimately strengthened them. Kalen spoke, voice resolute. We were abandoned. We were left for dead. But we endured. We adapted. We thrived. And that's the legacy of Deathworlders. Humanity is unstoppable. And now, anyone who witnesses it will know. Myra's eyes glimmered with pride. This planet will remember us. The colony will remember us. And humans, humanity will remember that survival isn't passive. It's active. It's about courage, strategy, and the refusal to quit. Torsen's grin was wide and triumphant. And the best part? Zithra is just one planet. We'll face others. And every time humans will rise, adapt, endure, and prevail. That's our edge. That's our legacy. The twin suns rose fully, casting long shadows across the revitalized colony. Fires burned steadily, machinery hummed efficiently, and humans moved with purpose, guided by the principles demonstrated by the Deathworlders. The abandoned planet was no longer a graveyard. It was a testament to resilience, ingenuity, and the unstoppable spirit of humanity. Kalen, Mira, and Torsen descended from the ridge, walking among the survivors. Every nod, every glance, every shared task carried the unspoken truth. Humans endure, adapt, and thrive. Zithra had tested them all, but in the end humanity had claimed victory, not through brute force alone, but through ingenuity, courage, and the relentless refusal to give up. The legacy of the Deathworlders would echo across the planet, across colonies, and across generations. Humans may be abandoned, challenged, and tested, but they will endure, adapt, and overcome. Always. Because humanity at its sharpest edge is unstoppable.